This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Coming up on The Payoff, it is not every day we get a super fan of The Payoff to come on and contribute in a super way, but it all worked out. This is a little disclaimer too. This is River, who is I say this frequently, but probably one of the best guests we've ever had here. River and I know each other. I've known him for the whole time he's been sober. And so there's parts of this, even early in his story, when the two of us are like giddy. We're like school kids, because the truth of the matter is I'm just so happy to see him flourishing the way that he's flourishing. And he knows me, and he knows who I am and, you know, how I'm sober, and I'm so grateful. So it's a great example of guys having a lot of fun in recovery. So don't get the wrong idea that like we think it's funny, some of the wreckage that we take part in, or, you know, that happens. I just wanted to get that out there. River is amazing. He's young. So if you've got someone young in your family that feels like they'll never get sober, or getting sober isn't fun, this is a great guy to pass along to. And if you just need a little bit of inspiration and positivity, this is a great way to spend the next hour doing whatever you're doing with a little bit of River talking to you about how he got sober and what he's doing today. It is always darkest before dawn, they say, and it got real dark for River. And we are now living in the sunlight of the spirit with this dude. So it's a special story, and I can't wait for you to listen. As always, but first, Kevin Souza. All right, folks. I don't know if you're watching at home, but we got John Gruden for you. No, he's not John Gruden. His name is River. River H, we'll call him, because that's his name. Riv, what's your sobriety date?
Yeah, I got sober January 11th, 2021.
And I remember like it was yesterday, dude.
Yeah, me too.
I really do. We were on a meeting. We call it the Fourth Dimension. It's an AA meeting. And this young guy turns up on this meeting, and he was pissed, right?
Sounds about right.
And now, but no. And I was talking to our buddy Murphy about you today, and it was like, man, like River, he's just like, you can tell when River's doing awesome, and he's doing awesome. And, you know, you might lose your shit later on tonight or tomorrow, like I will, you know, but it's pretty cool to see like what sobriety does for somebody else, right? Because when it's me and I'm looking in the mirror, I don't necessarily see it. But for you, when I see it in you, I'm like, wow, Riv has made like amazing strides. Now 4 years coming up in January, God willing, as we say.
Yeah, 4 years up in January, right around the corner.
All right, so take me back to the beginning. I want to know your first drink. What was it like, or first experience with alcohol or drugs?
Yeah, my first drink, my buddy's parents were out of town. I think it was sixth grade. And I hung out with a lot of buddies in the year above me. Their parents were out of town, and so we thought we'd sneak some booze. And I remember we're drinking it. We're stealing liquor out of the cabinet. But every time he went to the bathroom, I would drink a little more. I don't even know why I did it, but I remember that I did that. And I mean, the feeling was great, but then ended up falling downstairs, and his sister had to come and throwing up, and I loved it. Loved the excitement. Loved all of it. And so I kept running with it.
You were in sixth grade?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Is there any, and I know you're like home, you know what I mean? But like, is there any addiction in your family? And any like,
yeah, big time.
Okay.
Big time. So, well, my dad's sober. He's been sober, I think, like 12, 13 years. And his dad's sober. And then my mom's side, my mom's normal, but like half of her family is either in a program or active alcoholics.
Yeah.
And so it's riddled throughout the family. It really is. I didn't really have a shot.
Neither did I, dude. It's
Yeah.
I always say, like, my dad's family, it didn't run, dude. It galloped through my dad's family. And
Mhm.
for you, your dad, was your dad at all? And I don't mean to jump all over the place, but like he, obviously he's sober, I guess, 8 years by the time you start to hit your bottom or you start to think about getting sober. Was he like trying to get through to you, like what he saw, or how did that go at all? Because it's so hard for a family member to try to help somebody that's in the throes.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely understood it firsthand, uh, like the downfall, spiraling out. My case, it was a little bit like a tornado, but they knew it a lot. Both my parents knew it a lot before I got sober. I think it was pretty evident when I was like 15, 16 that they were trying to push that message, and I resisted it so hard that it was really just support once I had stretches of sobriety.
Yeah, that's only that in my experience, that's the best. That's we're just gonna do. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do when I'm in active addiction. There's nothing. I remember my mom trying to plant seeds the whole time. Like, your father has alcoholism in his family. It's likely that you probably have the exposure to the gene, whatever. And man, the moment I drank, it was like I absolutely loved it. So you drink it for the first time in sixth grade. Then how do you start to change, like, the way you approach life? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, so my approach to life for a while, leading up to it, was athletics, sports. That like took the cake for my life. Like that was where I got the excitement. That's where I felt good about myself. That's where all my buddies were on different travel teams or whatnot.
Playing lacrosse specifically, right?
Yeah, mostly lacrosse. And so that kind of continued. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, eventually the drinking and throw some drugs in there. And eventually, I mean, that was my identity. So it was kind of a slow transition. Um, I mean, definitely, I really, I don't know, I harnessed that party guy pretty early on. I mean, my peers in sixth grade weren't drinking, and they really were like, "What's going on with River?" And I loved it. I mean, it was something special. It was attention. Any type of attention, I loved. People talking about me, all that stuff. If it's bad stuff, making a fool out of myself, whatever. So it definitely shifted from the athletics over to just being a party guy and kind of loving that identity.
What do you think? And this isn't a 30 for 30, but like, what do you think, like happened to your career because of alcohol and drugs? Like your career playing lacrosse?
Yeah, I mean, I was so into lacrosse, practicing in the backyard all the time. Um, and then my freshman year of high school, I quit playing club. So then I was just playing for the high school team. And I mean, when you quit playing club and outside stuff, yeah, you kind of you kind of limit yourself with what you can do, how much better you get. So yeah, I mean, it alcohol and drugs definitely took that away from me. I didn't want to play any sports in the summer when everyone's hanging out and drinking, and so I don't know exactly how much it affected it, but it definitely took me down a level.
How about some consequences throughout high school? Anything? Any big thing happen? That,
Oh my gosh. Let's start with the first one.
yeah.
Yeah, I got my license and 16, a couple months later, I got arrested for the first time. DUI, theft, mischief, all that. Just borrowing my grandmother's car and went down to a buddy's beach house with his girlfriend and mine. Put a Took a stop sign out of the ground and put it on the car and was driving around with it. Um,
At
so yeah,
16?
yeah, I was 16.
Wow.
Yeah, didn't have my license for that long um, before I got it suspended for the first time. But so that was the first consequence. And I mean, yeah, it's a big deal getting a DUI that early and whatnot. But the unraveling of that event really changed my perspective on life without drugs and alcohol, honestly, because I was put in this situation where I'm on probation and um, I'm going to counseling that's required through my probation and taking P tests to make sure I'm not using. And so this was the first time that since I started that someone or some entity is keeping me away from drugs and alcohol. And I lost my mind. I mean, completely lost my mind. Um, yeah, I didn't have that crutch. I didn't have that thing that I built the rest of my life around, really, even at 16. And so I ended up, I mean, in a really dark spot. Um, Not wanting to be alive and ending up in the psych ward. Um, and my life was completely out of control. Um, Maybe more so at that point than when I was getting arrested and drinking and doing drugs. And I'm in the psych ward. I'm trying to break out of the psych ward. They're tranquilizing me and keeping me longer. And yeah, it was a really dark period. I mean, it was miserable, torturous, really,
What were
emotionally,
how were your
mentally.
peers responding to this? Like your friends and stuff?
Yeah. So the going to the psych ward was pretty quick. They didn't. Really wasn't interactions with my friends, letting them know what was going on. Just that River wasn't in school for a week, and then I got out and I'm telling them, yeah, I was in there and I'm trying to break through, steal keys, get out of there, break out, and they call it booty juice in the psych ward, but they come up with a needle and kind of put you to sleep, and you wake up in a white room. I mean, it's like it was a nightmare. And telling them this stuff, my buddies are like, dude, what?
Yeah.
What's happening with you? I mean, like what caused that? And what they couldn't understand and what I didn't understand until kind of reflecting on it was that's when something was stopping me from using drugs and alcohol, and that's how I react.
Yeah. You were just, I mean, you know, you're a sick alcoholic, like an addict, like I am, but like you were just sort of advanced. I mean, because that behavior in someone that's 16 is almost difficult to identify.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
it was
what's wrong with
difficult
this
to
person?
identify.
Like, they're 16. Like, you know, if it's a 24-year-old man that you know is an alcoholic, it's like, oh, okay, like this person's freaking out because they can't get booze. You know? Did
Yeah,
your
and
parents
up
know that
until
that
that
was the
point,
deal? Like that there was because you couldn't get alcohol? Did anybody else know that's why you were losing it? Or did they think that it was something different?
I think my mom pretty much knew.
Yeah.
Um, couldn't smoke weed and couldn't drink. Smoking weed was big for me. Um, Anytime I couldn't drink, and I didn't drink every day back then at 16, but I definitely smoked weed and had something in my system every day.
Yeah.
I actually talked to my mom recently about kind of her understanding of when it became like an issue and something that I was losing control over. She mentioned in eighth grade, I told her I'd got in trouble for smoking weed in eighth grade, and I told her like I don't think I can stop smoking weed every day. Um, so she was pretty prone to that fact, and especially having a whole family around. I think she started going to program for herself right after then.
For sure. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
kind of what you need to do.
Hmm.
Yo, so before and I want to get further towards when you get sober, but like, where do you think the absence of fear came from? Because it sounds like you really weren't scared of anyone. I was an alcoholic and an addict like from go, but I was very scared of my dad.
I don't really know where it went. Um, it just wasn't there when I mean, the getting in trouble and stuff, that couldn't really stop me. The fear came in once I was removed from it. And then I was like completely out of my mind, afraid of everything, going crazy anxious. But it's kind of like I just skipped over that natural fear of consequence or any of that. The phenomenon of craving was just way too high and fear just took a backseat.
You get like into college. like
Yeah.
to play lacrosse. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah. Towards the end of high school, I mean, I had a rehab stint towards the end of high school, packed all my stuff up in a trash bag and walked out of the rehab. And so that was to try to get to move back home. I got kicked out my junior year of high school.
Out of your house?
Yeah, out of my parents' house.
What was the last straw?
Yeah, I mean, it's dark again, but it's my story. It was chaos around here. Anywhere I was in this state of either being heavily intoxicated or going through this craziness in my head of not having substances, I mean, it caused me to do a lot of irrational behavior. And I had two younger brothers at the time, and I guess one was 7 and one was like 4 or 5. And one of my younger brothers, he's in a vulnerable spot. He's 7 years old. And my mom and I were arguing about something. I'm screaming and probably broke some stuff or something. And he comes down and he said, I want to kill myself. And shortly after that, my parents, rightfully so, I mean, they had to look out for everyone in the family, told me that I was going to have to find somewhere else to go because they had to take care of my little brothers.
Yeah. So you leave home again, like you're trying to get sober. What was the longest stint you put together? Like in high
100
school?
days. 100 days 3 times.
100 days 3 times?
On the dot. I relapsed on 101 3 times.
What was about the 101st day, Riv? What the heck?
Can only go through hell for about 100 days, Pete. Once I hit 101.
I want to get this out there, and I'll probably talk about this in the intro, lest anyone think like this is I'm crazy about River as a dude and seeing his progress, like to be where we are now. So if we're laughing and stuff, it's because I have a relationship with this guy and he's sober. And I think people get that. But I want, these stories are sort of funny because you're sober. They're really not funny, some of them. They're never similar to my background. Some of them will never be funny. But
yeah,
it is a joyous thing to be sober and to talk about this stuff. Even talking to you, man, it brings instant gratitude out of me because I look at you and I know where you are right now physically at home, and I know where you are in your life. And I know, dude, I know the chaos and the misery and the strife and the darkness I brought to my parents in their house. And to be able to go back to my mom's house now and to see her and to hang with her and have nothing but good vibes is a miracle of miracles, And it's crazy. I mean, it's the best kind of crazy ever. So you go, I just had to have that little rant. So you go to college and what happens there ramping up to the bottom dropping out and you get sober?
Yeah. So my path to college, no, I quit club lacrosse. I was lucky to have some natural ability there and did really well in high school. And so I was looking at, I had a family connection at Salisbury. I mean, my grades were in the.
So you grew up, by the way, in Delaware, Wilmington.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And my grades were in the dumps. I mean, truly were in the dumps. And that was like the only place I thought I could go. I like had an issue. They don't let you leave rehab to take your SATs. And so I was missing some SATs. And then towards the end of my senior season in lacrosse, the coach of Cabrini reached out to me and asked if I wanted to come up and take a tour. And I had nothing going for me. I mean, nothing. Everyone's planning what they're going to do. I had no idea. And so
Cabrini is a very good school right outside of Philly. It's like in the Villanova Radnor area.
Yeah. And they had a distinguished lacrosse program. And so I went up and toured and I was like, this is some structure I can cling on to. And so I ran with it. Ended up going there and starting freshman year. And it was kind of like, okay, my family's view is River starting like a new chapter. Maybe this is going to shake some of that chaos out. And so, showed up and kind of felt like a little bit of a fresh start. It was really refreshing for a while. Yeah.
So when you, by the way, because I used to do this, like even in my addiction, right? Like if I would catch a break or I maybe get a new job, and like you, like I was in the mix somewhat of actual life, like you experience little bits of success, here you are, you're going to play lacrosse in college. You're obviously a very good lacrosse player. Did you show up to Cabrini and like put this like almost like a representative of River out there, but not the real River, like the addict, right? Because ultimately, if we're going to get better, we got to go through all the addict bullshit and really get it out of our system, not put the mask on for a little bit. Did you put the mask on when you got to school?
So I put in a lot of effort in the classroom. I kept my grades better than I ever did in high school. That's something my parents and I didn't really talk much at the time, but I could always say, oh, I have an A in this class or something, and kind of tricking myself into this idea that I was doing better and everything was good. But no, I mean that that addiction crept up and people started to learn real quick. On the team, and consequences and suspensions from the team and stuff like that.
When was it? Like, first of all, when did you start to date Liv?
Yeah, I started to date Liv my senior year of high school.
So what the hell was she like? Boy, I mean, this guy is he's a little out of control, right?
Everything going on, I still had a little bit of charm. And I almost fully treated people with respect. I did hold on to that. I mean, there were some instances before meeting her that I wasn't respectful to people. And of course, you do some things that are really not great and you lose respect. But she came into my life and I was like, I can't lose this.
Yeah.
It was one of the best things that had happened to me in a long time. Didn't have much going for me. And I was like, I need to keep her in my life. So in that respect, I did everything I could.
So, okay, another positive person comes into your life. When do you meet Timmy Brooks?
Yeah, so the first time I met Timmy was actually my senior year of high school. He was going around and doing some talks to various high schools about addiction and all this stuff. And I had already been in a rehab and went through the probation and all that stuff. So I know about addiction, and he comes and he talks to everyone. And I went to a small school, a Quaker school in Wilmington, Delaware. And so I had like 70 people in my grade. He came and talked to us. And the dean for students pulled him aside and said, I have someone you really need to talk to. And so she set us up and we talked a little bit. And I was like, this guy's a loser. Really, that's what I thought at the time. And then I show up at Cabrini and we have our first team meeting, and there he is sitting right there. And he's like, what are you doing here? He's like, how are you doing? I was like, I'm doing great. Everything's good. And yeah.
For people that don't know, which might be a bunch. So Tim Brooks is a kid who grew up right around where River and I grew up, a high profile, like drug case, does a short stint in prison, gets caught dealing drugs. And you can look it all up, but has done quite the 180 and is doing things like helping out younger people at the time when he meets River, speaking at schools about addiction. And now he continues to do amazing work. But I figured, and honestly, I don't know your story up and down, but I knew you played lacrosse with Tim.
Mm-hmm.
I knew he was a real positive influence for you. So you're playing lacrosse with Tim now. It's so funny, dude. Wherever we go, there we are, right?
It's actually crazy.
Yeah.
Because he comes along later on in the story, and
how's college go for you? I mean, like when you get there, and because then it's not too much longer before you get sober.
Yeah, no. So college went quick, at least the party stage, and getting in trouble on the weekends pretty routinely. I have to sit down with the captains sometimes on a Monday, and Timmy's there and kind of scolding me for what I did. And so that continued. I mean, semi-normal stuff. It was in excess though. And then I had one of my biggest scares in addiction when I went and visited a buddy in Philly, and I mean, it was just madness. Don't know what happened. Ended up being able to piece it together. I ended up in someone's apartment and took some pills that were fake and laced. And it is crazy. I think it's the craziest piece of my story, and makes me forever grateful to be alive. My mom, who I wasn't talking to, had some nightmares, and she started calling my phone repeatedly in the middle of the night. I mean, repeatedly. She had a nightmare that I died, and it got the attention of these people in the apartment, and they came over and she answered the phone and was talking to her, and she said, "Check on him." And I was overdosing on the couch. Um, and so, I mean, that scared me to death, and that kind of put an end to this facade that I was living, that I had my stuff in order, playing lacrosse, doing well in school. I mean, it scared me like crazy. And that fear, though, I mean, like you mentioned, it couldn't compete with the cravings. And I wanted to stop everything right then. And 2 days later, I was drunk.
And so
So
when did you go? I mean, dude, that's my story in a sense, where it's like it's so hard to stop when you're younger, because I had a heart problem that ended my career playing football, but it's just like nothing could match the cravings and the want to drink and use, and also the facade that I was invincible.
yeah,
When did you finally wave the white flag? Honestly, I know by the time that you got to me, the white flag was not quite up yet, but you were sober. Like, when
yeah.
did you finally say, okay, I'm going to do what I can? How did that happen? What happens where you bottom out and you have your last drink or drug and you head off to this journey in sobriety?
Yeah, so I'll go through it kind of quick. There was another rehab stint there, um, a year after that event in Philly, and everyone was kind of excited about that. And then I relapsed again, and at this point, I mean, all this hope, and then getting crushed, and hope and crushed from all the people around me that love me. I mean, I was pretty cut off from people. I had to make times to see my little brothers. I had to talk to my parents about it, set up like an hour visit just to see my brothers. And then eventually they would they would come outside and hold my car door shut and tell me that they hated me, that I wasn't their brother anymore. And that sped things up for me. I mean, that the pain associated with that was greater than really anything I've ever felt. So that sped things up. That started happening. And then I spent Christmas break alone in the deserted lacrosse house up at school. Everyone went home to their families, and I'm just drinking until I pass out, waking up and drinking. Don't know what time of day it is. It was dark, and then it was Christmas that year. So that would have been 2020, just a couple weeks before I got sober, and I was able to come over for a little bit on Christmas Eve. That's when my family does everything big, and the stipulation was I had to be sober. Quickly found out I wasn't sober. I had to leave. And so Christmas I spent alone, and liquor stores are closed on Christmas in Delaware. Probably most places, but I knew in Delaware because I checked a couple. And then I ended up going and driving around Pennsylvania until I found a gas station that sold wine. And I was invited to my girlfriend's family's place for dinner. And I drank myself and passed out, and was like 2 hours late. They had my dinner wrapped up in tinfoil. And so I mean, I was burning every bridge, every last helpline that I had, I was burning. And a couple weeks after that, I think there was a day I didn't want to drink. Gonna try not to drink because this is a lot of pain, not being able to be around people I love. Stuff with Liv, I mean, it is on the rocks. She's just about done with me. And I decide not to drink for a day, and I wake up and I'm getting arrested again. Waking up, there's an empty bottle on the driver's seat and an empty pill bottle, and I don't know what happened. I mean, I wake up so confused. I really didn't know what happened. Turns out the car ran out of gas, and that was it for me. I didn't have any money to put more gas in, actually. I had $5 even in my bank account. I ended up finding out later on that I used a gift card to buy my last drink. I still have the gift card. It's a good reminder to buy a bottle. But I had $5 to my name, not enough to buy gas, ran the car out of gas, burned every bridge.
How about that metaphor, dude? I mean, you literally ran out of gas.
Ran out of gas. It's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah, ran out of gas, and I get arrested in her neighborhood. One of her neighbors. I mean, I ran out of gas in the neighborhood before I got to her house, and I was supposed to be there, so that Olivia's out looking for me, and her parents were looking for me. They find me there, and right as they're finding me, the police pull up, and so I was pretty beaten down. I mean, I was really beaten down, but still, I was still going to use my phone call to reach out to a buddy who I thought had cocaine to pick me up from the police station. I mean, I still just wasn't really done. And luckily they said, "Oh, someone's here to get you." And it was her dad, my girlfriend's dad. Took me back to her place, and I was like, "This is it. It's over." I didn't know in which way. I really thought that if I stopped, I was going to get into that suicidal state and end up killing myself or something. So it was one of the darkest times, definitely. Had like 3 really dark times. That was definitely one of them. And the next day I woke up shaking, couldn't eat anything, called my parents, tell them what happened. And I said, I need to go somewhere. I need to go to rehab. And I mean, they were like, we can't keep doing this cycle, and people get sober without rehab. So good luck. We love you. We're here to support you, but we can't financially do that. It takes away from the rest of the family. And I was like, I thought that was the one thing that they would definitely do. Like one string still there. If I say waving the rehab flag, they're going to be there. And they weren't. And I felt really alone. And then I called Timmy. So I didn't know what to do. Was in a really bad state. Really
And
thought
at
I was
this
going
point, is Synergy, is that open at this point?
Yeah, it is open.
Okay, so Synergy, which is a recovery house, is open and running. So you call him, and what does he say?
I call him and I say, "Listen, man, I'm in a really bad way. I don't know if I want to live. I don't think I can live without using drugs, but I want to try." And he said, I can have a bed ready for you tomorrow. I said, "Listen, Timmy, I got $5. I don't have anything, and my parents aren't willing to financially support it right now." And he said, "Just come up here and we'll figure it out later." And that was my first step towards this life I'm living now.
So what happens next? Like take me through. I kind of know, but not really.
I show up at the doorstep, didn't go to detox. I'm shaking, crying on and off, sweating, throwing up. I mean, I couldn't do anything. People were like, "Geez, who's this guy coming into the house?" And
you're coming off everything, right?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
And for like the first day or two, I literally just sat on the couch and shook and cried.
Yeah.
Didn't talk to anyone. And I mean, I talked to Timmy a bit. He was just like, "Dude, just stay here. Whatever you do, just stay. I was an angry guy. If you need to break something, do it. Just stay." And he put me in touch with my sponsor now. He took me out to a diner. That's when I met him, and we're talking. And it was a morning, and he's telling me about himself, about his story, and I'm connecting to it. I hadn't eaten yet, but we're at a diner, so I thought I needed to eat. I'm trying to eat, man, and I'm going back to the toilet to throw up and coming back and eating a little more because I thought he wanted me to. And like, I had no idea how to live. Yeah. I knew I couldn't stomach it, but I didn't want to disappoint this guy who's here to help me. And so I just keep trying it. Eventually he's like, "Dude, you don't have to keep eating." But he just told me, he's like, "Just be honest, be totally honest with me. And like, let's start this journey." So I did, and I was completely honest, and I leaned on him multiple times a day. First couple months were brutal. I mean, I had no idea how to do anything. I didn't know how to handle any situation that made me uncomfortable. Facing jail time with multiple DUIs, totally scared, totally angry at everyone, wanting to fight people around the house. But I just stayed being honest about how I felt. I went to a meeting, I shared about that, called him, was totally honest about that. And eventually these dark clouds started to split. And it was months down the road, and I am in a 12-step program, and I worked through some of the steps. And then eventually there was a day that I felt like a little bit of contentment, and it was shocking because I didn't think that was possible without drugs or alcohol. I really did not. I did not think my life was ever going to be content. I thought it was always going to be that misery that I associate with leading me into the psych ward. So I kept doing it, man. I just kept taking direction from people, reaching out to people like you. Talked to you a good bit in the beginning, getting on meetings. I mean, crying in meetings, just letting it all out there. And that saved my life. I mean, eventually doing that over and over and over again led me to this realization that, okay, you're starting to feel a little more content, and these crazy negative feelings are less and less. And so that's when I realized that there might be another solution here. There might be an actual livable life without drugs and alcohol.
What kind of exercises did you find yourself doing that brought that contentment? I mean, what was it in your experience that took you to that place where you were like, holy shit, like this recovery thing I'm doing now is giving me because that's, and I'm not saying that you were there yet, but it eventually gave me the same type of feeling that alcohol and drugs did, which was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, the connections with people, my brother's wanting to see me again. That was big. And I needed that stuff, that external stuff in the beginning. I needed that. Doing okay in school and being on the team and having these connections with people, meeting all these new people, definitely being around my family again. I needed all the external stuff because eventually then there was that internal happiness and contentment. But the exercises, I mean, my story is just raw honesty and letting out the bad stuff. And it opens up space for some of the good feelings.
It's funny because everyone is different. And I couldn't find that gear, to be honest, for so long. And you had that gear, like that honesty gear where it's like, you know, it's like a beautiful thing. Honesty is like when you really could finally be like, look, man, I'm not going to tell people what they want to hear still, but I'm not going to drink anymore. You know, it's like, and I'm not going to use drugs. Like, and what's going to come out of my mouth, there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable stuff, but ultimately that is the road to recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that. What was it like for you? You know, you were in a recovery house. How essential was that for your recovery? And I ask this is based on my own experience, right? Like that was for me I went to rehab, then I lived in a recovery house for like 6 months. And the time in the recovery house was major for me because I would talk about recovery with other dudes and other dudes wanted to talk about recovery. And that started to get me all sorts of juiced up. You know, like how important was that recovery house setting?
It was everything. I mean, it really was everything. And if that offer wasn't extended, when I had nothing to give, if Timmy didn't help me out, if I didn't live there with that group that I lived with, I mean, I don't know if I would be here. I doubt it. I don't think I would be here today. Getting to experience things with people and having people there who are feeling the same way. In the beginning, I had no defense against the first drink or the first drug. And having that little bit of security of being around all these people who were like-minded and living in a safe space where recovery is the focus. I mean, that was essential for me in the beginning. And then I ended up staying for a long time because it just made things easier. it was easier to live like that. It was easier to have people around that understood how I was feeling and all that. And I fell in love with the community. So
did you understand, or I mean, like, dude, I remember I was in a bad relationship, and I remember talking to you, and like, you would sort of help me. And I don't even know if my ego would allow myself to tell you then, 'cause I try to act like I have my shit together. And there was fear that maybe you thought I did, and I didn't want to tell you I didn't. But like, did you understand you were helping people? Like, too, especially people like me, but also especially Synergy, where now, ultimately you ascend to like an elder statesman there. And you don't have to have been sober forever to have a little bit of street cred in a facility like that, right? Because you're doing amazing stuff by just living a sober life around people who are showing up on day one.
yeah, I mean that's one of the beauties of it. You have this turnover where people are coming in. So there's even when I'm there for 2 weeks, there's someone who's been there for less time, and I have the ability to help show them the ropes, or I mean, if it's simple stuff like how to do their chore or help them out on a tough day. I mean, helping out other people distracted me from all of my stuff that I was dealing with. I wasn't thinking about the jail time. I wasn't thinking about how scared I was about literally everything. It just took me out of myself, and that was definitely one of the benefits of living in a place like that, getting to
Was
help out people.
was there a moment when you realized that like you were the problem and there was a relief?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely that came from step work, and it was a relief because my view on the world was that everything else was wrong,
Yeah,
and
me too.
how am I ever going to feel happy again if everything else is wrong? I can't fix everything. But if
Yeah.
once I figured out I could work on myself and I'm better equipped to handle anything that goes on, I mean, that was one of those realizations that caused me to realize that there's another life out there for me, and there's an option if I just continue to work. A relatively simple program to keep me on the beam, and so
Yeah, for me, I had like I was able to take the accountability piece into like so many other parts of my life, and it was all such a relief that like, wait a minute, like I don't need alcohol to make shit make sense. And without alcohol, if I'm accountable and I work on my shit, life becomes manageable. And then, oh, by the way, sometimes life becomes really good,
mhm.
and the bottoms are nowhere near what they like. The pain is like the pain you describe so well, really, is like that's gut wrenching for me because I know what that's like. And now it's like, it's just so much different, right? Like the lows are nowhere near the lows. I mean, the shit that happens to me today that I get upset about, when Murph came on this show years ago, right? I remember he said, if I woke up today the way I used to feel every day when I woke up and I was drinking and using, I would call 911. And that's, I mean, like I would. I
Yeah.
mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Easy. All right, so let's get back like romantic relationships, and specifically, obviously for you, it's with Liv, your girlfriend. That is always like a high wire act, right? I remember when I was in my recovery house, this guy Jerry Z came to see us and would talk to us every like Thursday or whatever, and I remember him saying, "Matters of the heart will take you out." Like, like that'll be the thing you really got to watch for. How did you manage your relationship with someone who you loved, but obviously I would imagine there was some work to do there.
Yeah. I mean, that was really, really tough in the beginning of getting sober. And I kind of knew it would be. And I gave her some warnings that, I mean, all my crutches are down, and I'm going to have to face all these emotions, big emotions, because I was definitely in love with her. And I mean, in the beginning stages, it was me trying to handle these feelings. She's going to leave me. Something's going to happen. All these fear based feelings. And having to learn to not, well, one, that they're internal and they're not always real. And a lot of that came from talking to other people about how I was feeling. and then not acting on them. I mean, some crazy thoughts and feelings in the beginning, and if I acted on all of them, I would be in a bad spot. And
Riv, for me, there's some crazy thoughts today.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
So,
talking to somebody about, I was with Christy, my girlfriend, and we were doing all kinds of stuff that I did not want to do. And it was stuff that was good for me and good for our relationship and good for Christmas because we're putting up decorations. And my brain, like the sober version of me is in my brain like a hockey goalie, like saving every single thought that comes off my brain, stop. Because like everything I want to say, I 98% I had to stop because it's all selfish. It's all ego. It's all these crazy thoughts. And what a gift to have like that goalie who you can work up there, and sometimes look, man, they're going to get by the goalie. It just shit happens. And you got to deal with it. But I try to I don't want to be constantly saying I'm sorry today, so we have a code or a program that we can live by. What were some of the biggest moments with your family and your parents where you realize like, oh wow, this is working? I mean, you're in their house right now.
Yeah. So that's definitely, it's working with that. I mean, there's a lot of big ones. There was one when the Phillies were in the World Series, and I saved up and I bought me and my mom a ticket to go to the World Series together. And the whole way driving to pick her up, I was just the waterworks. I was crying. I mean, my mom and I did not get along, and that relationship was so damaged. And that one took time to repair. But putting some effort into and wanting to be around each other. With that event, that was a big one. I mean, I watched some shows last night with my mom too, and it's still fresh there. This feeling of, wow, am I lucky? If life were fair, I would not be anywhere near her. I wouldn't be anywhere near my family. So I'm just lucky and grateful.
That freshness will stay because you stay in that state of gratitude. Like I spent like a couple weeks home with my mom this summer, and we hung out, watched shows, and did the stuff you're describing. And it was like kind of like the best couple weeks of my summer, and that like talking to you keeps that fresh, that gratitude, that that's so amazing,
Yeah. Another one was with my sister. She's 2 years older than me, and she moved out to Montana after college. And so I really didn't have, growing up, we had such a strong bond, and then it was really fragmented after that. And so again, I went out and visited her one-on-one and got to spend time with her. That was a big one. But it really is like just these little things. A month ago, I was with my youngest brother, and he just told me, he said, I'm so glad you stopped drinking. You'd probably be dead. And it was simple like that. But he meant it, and it was from the heart, and it's just awesome. I mean, it's just so awesome to be back in these people's lives and them opening their arms to me and spending time. I mean, I really don't take any of it for granted anymore. I really don't. And I'm an emotional guy through and through. And still to this day, I mean, sometimes I'm just driving and I think about all the things I have and I tear up because I was in such a hopeless spot. And I hope I never lose that feeling.
What do you do today to keep yourself like in a state of grace and gratitude? And honestly, for us, it's like an out of trouble, like to not drink.
One bad decision, letting one of those thoughts run rampant, not catching it, not talking to someone about one of these crazy thoughts, because they're there. They're definitely there. But for me, I mean, I'm heavily in the program, and it's maintaining that on a weekly basis. And if I'm not actually attending something, I mean, I lost a buddy of mine a few weeks ago to addiction. And since then, every day since he's passed, I've been writing out a gratitude list. I got back to that. And so it's a real simple thing, but it's amazing how much better my perspective is on my life and how little these problems seem to me. So it's things like that. It's sponsoring guys like you were talking about earlier, helping out people and getting to see progression in how they're doing. Yeah, and just trying to make my life not all about me. Just try to do something for someone else. I mean, all of that stuff together keeps me in this state of gratitude and wanting to do the right thing. And so it's simple stuff. And sometimes I don't do it, and then I'm all out of whack.
How do you handle those times when you don't do it?
Telling myself, show up somewhere and telling myself,
Yeah.
tell them I haven't been doing what I want to do, and I'm pissed off at everything and mad at people and all these problems I have, and then I dive back in. I mean, I've definitely had stints even in my sobriety where I've been a little bit absent and I go into a really bad spot and I do things that I end up regretting and things I have to end up making right. And the answer for me is always just dive back in and dive back in hard, because you're on a slippery slope. And I know where that takes me. And it's misery. So I dive back in and get plugged in, and I'm on a good stretch right now.
Yo, man, I got a question. So now you got a real good job. You graduate college, obviously, so even stuff on the outside looks good. Clearly talking to you, it's because the stuff on the inside is good. But how do you conduct yourself around? And I'm just curious. There's no right, wrong answer. Not that you would think there is. But like, how do you conduct yourself at work now? Like, the people there know you're sober? How does that work?
Yeah, so
because they don't have to know.
I'm very open about it.
Yeah,
I'm very open about it. Wherever I am, but at work, it just hasn't come up yet. And someone asks, or we go to work happy hour and you're not drinking, I'm totally honest with them. It hasn't come out yet, and that's fine. But I'm just so grateful to be employed, because I was unemployable for a long time. And so, I mean, I'm just trying to learn, trying to absorb, if someone needs a hand or doesn't understand something, I'm trying to help them out. So that's how I hold myself at work right now. But sobriety part hasn't come up yet. Came up in my interview. They wanted to know about a couple arrests, and so that had to come up. But with my colleagues, it hasn't yet. Yeah. Sure, it will soon, and I'm more than happy to share people.
Yo, think about that. I got to jump in. Like that. Those are the things that I know for me, like, kept me from getting sober. Like, I'll never be able to do this, that, or the other because of all the damage I've done in my addiction. Like, whether, a lot of times it's legal stuff, right? Or like relationship stuff. And like, here you are, like, the moment happens and it worked out for you. You know what I mean? Like, in the interview, like that, it came up. And you didn't turn to dust. They didn't freak out and say, "Get the fuck out of here, River, you shit," which is what we tell ourselves is going to happen.
Oh, I thought for sure that was coming.
Yeah. And it's like, no. And look, and it doesn't mean that like stuff won't come up and won't go your way. Like, the consequences and all that stuff, like, doesn't disappear, but it becomes somehow, some way manageable. Yeah. And like, you're able to ascend to the heights that you've ascended to. All right. Anything else? I've kept you too long.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
you're a young man. What do you say to young people who think like, shit, I can't be sober? Like, I appreciate that you said, when Timmy Brooks, who I think is a pretty cool dude, you said, I thought he was a loser because he was at your school talking about being sober. What do you tell young kids who are just like, yeah, man, like, that shit's for the birds?
Yeah, well, I might see them down the road, as was my case, but I don't know. I mean, like, my younger brother, he doesn't drink or anything, and he's in high school. I was getting arrested at his age, and I mean, he sees in me that you can live a life that's happy and exciting, and I still do fun stuff. Still joke around and funny, all that stuff. And that's important to see. So, I mean, whenever I come into it, it's really just hoping that my actions and how I'm living my life, people on the outside see it. And I have buddies from high school who reach out and are like, dude, you're killing it. And I'm pretty jealous that you're not drinking anymore or something like that. And I'll talk to them a little about it. And then I don't hear from them for a couple months. I'm sure down the road I'll be there for them, but it's just continuing to live this life and staying plugged in and doing those things we mentioned earlier. There's an attractiveness to it. I mean, when I'm really on, there's an attractiveness to it, and there's no two ways around it. But I mean, life, what I needed to know was life could be fun, can be happy. I didn't know any of these things. You can still joke around. You can still listen to music. I didn't know if I could listen to music being sober. Like all these things that it's like impossible to grasp at the time. I mean, when you're in addiction, it's impossible to grasp that life can be like this. So just trying to show it. I mean, I think that's my biggest asset around my cousins, my family, my brothers. Definitely, I'm able to be an example to them. Yeah, so that's really it.
Dude, they say you got to give it away to keep it, brother. You are giving it away, and it's very clear. Like you're in the flow state. So it's awesome to talk to you.
Yeah.
It's always awesome to talk to you, but it's awesome to see. Again, I can put my finger on it when you came around, and the difference is, I mean, it's night and day, dude. Just like it is for me. Like for people that saw me when I first came in. So I love you, Riv. I'm pumped that we did this. Thank you so much, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Pete.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.